I was looking at you on X, not in a pervy way, but in your X bio, it says the first word in your bio says Christian, and then I think father, husband, and musician, which is a bit rare if you look at today's societies. Creative people generally don't tend to be religious because creative people tend to break down barriers, right? They break down categories to create something new from it in a creative way. So, just explain a little bit
Mm.
why you're one of the few creative people in the world that ostensibly says, well, I'm a Christian first and foremost. How did that come about?
Um, well, I'd say that I'm, liberal as an artist. I push the boundaries of creativity. Obviously, remixing cats and that kind of thing isn't, a creative norm per se. So yeah, I'd say creatively I'm a liberal. But when it comes to my moral compass and the rules that I follow personally, I'm probably quite conservative. But yeah, I would say that my Christianity almost informs everything that I do, which is why it's first and foremost in my bio. I think it's something that I never really used to advertise, early on in my career. I think it's maybe quite risky if you're wanting to get past sort of certain gatekeepers in the music industry. I think as soon as they see that you openly Christian or anything like that, it does pose problems. But I'm at a stage now where I don't really rely on gatekeepers or external factors to kind of dictate where my career is going to go. So I just decided, you know what, I'm going to just let people know that I'm Christian and let people know where I stand.
So when you say Christianity sort of, um, I can't remember the words you used, not inspire, but when you said it
It
gives you a sense of
informs.
how you informs, there you go, it informs your creativity and informs what you do with your success. You went viral for the cats and dogs videos, which was fantastic. And you gave, I think it was $100,000 to the SPCA in Springfield, Ohio. I know you've done quite a few other charity driven songs and musical endeavors and things like that. Is that what you're talking about? Is that how Christianity informs you?
So that's just one part of it. So I'd say, the main part is, being connected to God and understanding where creativity comes from. It's not something that comes from me per se. It's the way I see it is, it's all out there, kind of in the universe, and it's up to you or me whether we want to tune into that or not. Kind of like a radio signal. And I think the more you meditate and pray and spend time in the Word, I think the more connected you become to this creative source, which I believe is God. Um, so yeah, the charity side of it is obviously important. I truly believe that the more you give, the more you get back, and I've seen that in my own career just by giving back whatever money I make from Spotify or YouTube or things like that. The more I get rewarded, just whether it's with more creativity or just having songs that do well or getting invited to play at certain venues, or I don't know how it all works, but it's something that is clear in the Bible that if you give back, if you give of yourself, you get back tenfold. So I guess it seems to be working.
Well, I think it does. What did you get last year on YouTube? 2 billion views? Over 2 billion views, if I remember.
Yeah, so the way YouTube works is if if one of your songs gets used in a YouTube short or in another video, that gets counted as a view. And I have one song in particular that for some reason just keeps getting used in YouTube shorts. It's a song called "Please Go Away" featuring a cat that I called a Lugalug 2.0 for lack of a better name. Um, and yeah, that song just racked up crazy amounts of views from people just using the song, in their shorts and that kind of thing. So on my channel alone, uh, I haven't checked recently, but I'm sort of approaching 1 billion views the last time that I checked. But if we had to count all the other channels that are using the song and that kind of thing, it was, yeah, I think about 2 billion last year, which is,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't even know how to quantify that.
Well, I mean, I can state without any hesitation that about 500 million of those views are from my own daughter. So I've already told you before. So let's just give me a cut for that CPM. um,
Yeah.
but but so you're an artist, right? You make unique music in terms of you take what exists and you really mix it into something even better. You give back to charity. I assume you make a very good living from what you do. Yet we both of us are South Africans, and somehow both of us are going to stay in this country of ours called South Africa. We both are currently filming from South Africa. What prevents you from choosing that path of saying, okay, well, let me go to Los Angeles? I could get like a $10 million brand deal, or whatever the case might be. What keeps you here? You
I
have
mean, I
everything you need to make it really big somewhere else, right?
could even apply for refugee status, I believe. Although I'm not
Are you an
Afrikaans.
Afrikaner?
I have an Afrikaans wife, so maybe I qualify.
You made an Afrikaans song called Mevrouw. I think that's more than qualification.
Yeah, and I think if you can prove that your life is in danger in some way, I've got countless receipts of ANC members, sending me threats and, you know, putting my life in danger. So I've
Welcome to
got
the club,
plenty of
yes.
receipts. No, I mean, I've had the privilege of touring extensively over the last few years, and yeah, despite our problems here in South Africa, I still believe it's one of the best places in the world, if not the best. Uh, I've just come back from a UK and Ireland tour, which was great, but it was very cold. For most of the time, it was, between 1 and 3 degrees. Went to Scotland and it was snowing. I actually lost my voice in Scotland. In the last 3 shows, I had to do, with a jar of honey literally by my side. I was just glugging honey like Winnie the Pooh, trying to keep my voice alive. And as great as the UK is, I mean, it's just too cold. I'm just glad that I went there in February to actually experience a UK winter, because it was, yeah, just horrible. I think there's something in my DNA that just really gets offended by the cold. There's been a lot of talk about Neanderthals and how we, migrated north, or we were Homo sapiens that migrated north and met Neanderthals along the way, and that's in our DNA. And I think when they got up to the north, they realized it was too cold, and that's why they came back. This time on ship, though. So I think in
Yes,
my
yeah, but
DNA is this true sense of wanting to be in a place where it's warm for at least most of the year. Um, and yeah, apart from that, just the food in South Africa is amazing. I toured the States in 2023, amazing place, but the food is just, for the most
that's
part,
awful.
horrible. Everything's got corn syrup in it. You literally can't escape the corn syrup. It's in everything. Uh, and yeah, just after a month, I just felt really weird just from eating this like hyper, you know, corn syrup infused, fatty, salty food. Um, so I'm really grateful for just the amazing produce that we have here. And to any farmer that's watching this, just thank you. We love and appreciate the hard work that you do. And even though you might not be appreciated by our politicians, the people that, rely on your food every day. We really do appreciate your amazing work. So that's the other thing. And then obviously the people, ordinary South Africans that I, you know, interact with every day are just amazing. I know there's probably this perception out there, especially on platforms like X, that I'm this racist, and everyone like who doesn't have the same shade as me hates me. But I interact with people every day, whether it's at the airport or just walking to the shops. People of all colors that I meet who are just very friendly and you know for the most part appreciate the things that I say online, and speaking my mind. It often actually surprises me. Like a black guy will come up to me and just say, keep speaking your mind, love what you do. I'm like, wow, that's great. So I think there's like a silent majority that hold very similar views, but they're very wide, just their opinions to themselves, because if they had to post it online, they would get absolutely destroyed by the Twitter mob. So
Yeah, I was actually on that front. I was talking to my wife over the weekend. We went for a lunch with the whole family, and we had such great service. Everyone in the restaurant, the people who worked there, the people who were patrons like us. It was a good vibe, as the youth say these days, right? And I said, someone sent me the crime stats for South Africa since 1994, where over 1.5 million people have been murdered since 1994 in this country.
yeah,
Like millions
absolutely.
of armed robberies, millions of sexual assaults, like just terrible things have happened to people in this country. But I'm trying to reconcile those stats with my sort of lived experience. And I know people are going to say, oh, you're just an elitist, you live in a nice area, etc. I live in Johannesburg, right? I'm not moving to the Western Cape to get away from whatever. No, Joburg's my place. I like Joburg a lot. I'm going to stay here as much as I want. But I fully agree with you in the sense that I see what's on the news and I see what people are doing to each other, and I see the international news about us. But my lived experience is markedly different. Like, I don't think
Yeah,
there's a sort of a genocidal streak amongst 80% of the population to want to kill you and I. I think there's maybe
true.
1 in 5% of the population. They happen to be extremely loud. But we should
Yeah,
still be concerned about that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we should ignore them. I mean, they can, genocides happen or revolutions happen with a small minority of people. But for the most part, I've traveled length and breadth of this country. I've never really felt unsafe in a real
yeah,
sense of the word.
yeah. I mean, I don't want to seem like an ostrich with his head in the sand, but yeah, the lived experiences. I don't think South Africans have the appetite for genocide. I don't think. I don't want to eat my words either. You got it. I feel cautiously optimistic about staying here, despite all the news, despite everything. I think it's important that we, as moderate South Africans, sort of push back against the nonsense that people are spewing. I mean, Tuli Madonsela has lost her mind. I used to respect her as public protector, and she was one of the people that used to call. She would see through the BS. When white monopoly capital was this word that was being thrown around, she was the one that said, "I don't buy this. I see this as some kind of propaganda word that's been thrown around to try and deceive people into thinking, whites are evil." She was that person, and now she's the one saying that the AfriForum are longing for apartheid and they want to feel special again. It's just weird to me that people like her are doing complete 180 turns. Um, but it is also interesting that she's the head of social justice in at Stellenbosch University now. So I think the stuff kind of used to confuse me. I'd go like, why would someone do such a 180 turn? But all you have to do is see what position they're in now and see who's funding this stuff. And more often than not, it's the their ties to the UN and
Correct.
social development goals, all these things that sound great. They want to end poverty, they want to end or they want to have gender equality and all this stuff, which sounds great, but you know I'm starting to think more and more that this goal of ending poverty is more just a euphemism for enforcing communism. And when they say things like they want gender equality, it sounds more and more like they want to destroy the nuclear family and destroy gender roles. Where this is again where my Christianity really ties into how I see the world. I believe the God of the Bible created two genders, man and woman. Both are equal in value, but different in function. And I want to say that again. Men and women are equal in value, but different in function. And this whole thing of gender equality, I think, uh, really distorts that and creates more problems than solutions. Uh,
Well,
so yeah,
I don't know who would disagree with you. Like, who would disagree with that? No, okay. A lot of
well, a
people disagree with
feminist,
the notion.
feminist.
Well, but now we're starting to understand that a lot of these things that we've been looking at for the past 15 years have been absolutely fake, like completely fake. All the woke stuff and the DEI stuff and all the things that have tried to corrupt and destroy normality, right? Normality is husband and wife, children, extended family, passed on to the next generation. We lived like this for hundreds of thousands of years as Neanderthals, and it's not going to change anytime soon, right? But when you see the things that Doge is doing in America and the funding that is going to subvert the way humans have lived for a very long time, it's all completely fake. Like no one
Yeah.
actually believes it except for the like stupidists at the bottom of the ladder. But everyone else was just getting paid for some reason. Like it's all fake. And I think that is gratifying because if it wasn't fake, I'll be really concerned.
You know what I mean? Look, if I had to track the evolution of my sort of beliefs over the last 20 years, I'd say I was probably quite left leaning starting out as a musician, which I think is fairly normal. Um, I had a music video with a drag queen, Manila Fontes, who's an amazing drag artist. Um, and I was surprised how well the video did, right? Because it got played on Trace and MTV and all these things, and it was getting all this amazing press. I'd never seen anything like it. And now I understand it's because, this is just, exactly what these people want to promote is, transgenderism. And look, if someone wants to be a drag queen and, you know, perform as a drag artist, I have nothing against that. I believe it's like an art form. But as soon as it starts, look, go and watch the music video yourself and decide. Like
No,
you
uh,
you might not think it's great,
no,
but
no.
I
You still,
if you're a person who is an adult and has decided this is what I want to do, I'd say go do that. But
yeah,
if you start like indoctrinating children into believing that uh you know like my son, for example, he comes up to me and says, "Daddy, why don't boys paint their nails or anything like that?" He's just curious. I'm going to tell him, well, it's normally something that girls do, and you know you can do it as a boy, but as long as you know that you're still a boy and it's just pretend, uh that's fine. But kids believe all kinds of things. My son might believe someday that he's Spider-Man, but I'm not going to go and tell him that he's Spider-Man. I'm going to encourage him to pretend that he's Spider-Man, uh, because pretend play, I believe, is important. If anything, pretending to be someone else helps you understand who you are. But if
Sure.
you, as a parent or a teacher, are telling children, maybe that is who you actually are. Maybe you are Spider-Man. Maybe you are a little girl to me. And now we're going to start calling you, Lucy, whatever. That is where it becomes dangerous.
Very dangerous. But thankfully, the Americans voted against it in a landslide election. And I think what Trump 2.0 is showing us, A, it was all fake, and B, it was all fake and paid for. I mean, that's the essential thing. It also drives me a
Yeah.
bit mad that I spent many years arguing against this. I'm not going to say I'm a freedom fighter or any nonsense like that. I'm not an activist, right? But I had a I took a lot of crap for it for like 10, 15 years for saying this is wrong, completely and utterly wrong. And now you just find out, oh no, it's just people actually just getting paid to spread nonsense. Like there's no like Illuminati, there's no like elder council of the world saying, oh, we need to destroy everything. No, it was just like fake people getting paid, which is really, really annoying for the most part. So
The
let's
question is, I
go
mean,
ahead.
what is the goal? Like, why are people getting paid? Why did my music video featuring Manila Fontees, shoot up on the charts on Trace and MTV? Like, what's the end goal, in your opinion?
I will tell you, the biggest red pill you'll ever find out is that the Soviets and the Western powers after World War II had basically the same goal. They just had different ways of getting to that goal. There's a great interview that I'll send to you after we've spoken with a chap called N.S. Lyons. And N.S. Lyons postulates that after World War II, people were trying to figure out how did this happen? Right? How did so much destruction, death, concentration camps, Holocaust, how did it happen? And they concluded that it happened because Germany was a very closed society, homogenous, same history, same beliefs, same culture, and that promotes a type of vaingloriousness, like this idea that we are so much better than everyone else. So the solution to prevent another World War II or III is to have open societies. Right, and open societies are based on the sort of the civil rights, human rights era, where people are equal value across the value chain. They just need to be educated. But if you're born in Afghanistan, or if you're born in England, or if you're born in Somalia, you're still a human being. You still have rights. You should be treated the same everywhere you go. And they try to distill these passions that people have, like courage and honor and nationalism and patriotism and all the rest of it, through this managerial class of bureaucrats in each state that enforces labor laws, that enforces non-discrimination laws, that enforces civil rights laws and all the rest of it. But what you find out is the more that they try to deracinate people from who they are, the more those people vote against the very idea of deracination. And Trump 2.0 is the greatest articulation of that, where Trump says, I'm a nationalist, America first, I don't want wars anyway, and we want to put a spaceship on Mars with Elon Musk's help as soon as possible. That's it. And you've got a landslide. So I think the theory is, what you're finding out is that the open society is now dead. And maybe we're going back to a more closed nationalist society around the world. We'll see how that plays out. I'm not saying it's good or better than the open society, but you can see the open society's faults by diluting the passions of man. They created this stifling, stale worldview that is basically all funded by entertainment and nonsense. So that's his hypothesis, and it's one I tend to agree with.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the privilege of, as I said earlier, I've been all around the world in the last few years. And one place which I never really had paid attention to or had any particular desire to visit was a place called Poland, which was an amazing place to perform. The crowd was so receptive, but it felt different. I literally didn't know anything about Poland when I went there, but it felt different to most of the European cities that I'd been to on this tour. it the first thing that struck me was that it was incredibly clean. Uh, we were staying, in the city center of well, I've gone blank now. Can't remember the name of the city that we're in.
Warsaw or Krakow?
We did both, but yeah, it was in Warsaw. I think the first show was Warsaw. Yes. It was just incredibly clean. It felt very safe, and it felt like a homogenous society. And then only afterwards, I started researching Poland, and the prime minister or the president uh, is just very openly, honestly, candidly saying, we're a Christian nation. We don't want other religions here. You can call me a racist, whatever you want. This is what we stand for. We're Christians, and journalists were trying to say, but isn't this stance racist and all this stuff? And he said, maybe, I don't care. Literally, I have children and I want them to grow up in a safe country where they're proud of who they are as Polish people, as Christians, and if you don't like it, then whatever. And it was just very refreshing to see someone's, you know, not really cowering to pressure from the media, and just saying he literally doesn't care what the media says.
Exactly. He only cares
Right.
about those who elected for him, right? The people who elected him are Christian people, are Polish people. They know their identity, they know their history. They've been screwed over by the East and the West over the past century. They've lost 30% of their population in World War II. Why must we allow Afghani refugees in here? Why must we allow Pakistani refugees in here? Like, no. Like, for once, we can be our own nation, and we have been for 30 years, and we'll continue to do that. It's not an unreasonable request at all. Someone else
Yeah.
to look at is someone like Viktor Orban in Hungary, who's been on this train for close to 20 years now. Very good on this, especially. And I think Hungary, Poland, uh, Singapore, a bit less, but those two countries in Eastern Europe, Estonia and others, are sort of the model for the world going forward in terms of they know who they are, they know their history, they share values across 99% of society, and that's when you can actually build a real nation. Ironically, it's what built Europe in the 20th century, and it's crumbling apart now because of unchecked immigration into Europe, right? When you have a national pension system, a national health system, a national transport system, there are expectations placed on how to use those things. But if you have 2, 3, 4, or 20% of the population not understanding how to use those things, it gets corrupt very quickly. And it's not due to those people being corrupted. It's about the fact that different group of people bought and built the institutions, and others are using them. And it's not easy to do.
Sorry, my dad was trying to phone me. Sorry,
You
father.
always answer. You always answer if your dad calls.
Well, let me just send him a voice note. How's it, Dad? Yeah, I'll see you at the golf club at 3:15. Cheers. Playing golf later.
Oh,
That's the
nice.
other
Oh,
reason I'm
this,
here. Family. Family is
to play to play
got to
golf.
play golf
Okay,
with your dad.
must I edit that out?
No, leave it in. People
Oh,
must know
okay,
that I
brilliant.
play golf with my father.
It is important. I go hunting with mine. We're not the same.
Yeah. No, my dad was a very conservative doctor and loves his golf. So you go hunting with your dad. Doctors generally like playing golf. I don't know what it is. Have you ever met a
Fair enough.
doctor that loves hunting?
No,
Yeah, they
no, I have
normally
not.
they normally play golf. It's pretty much the same thing. Instead of aiming at an animal and shooting it, you're aiming at a stick with a golf club. It's
Yeah, but
kind
there's
of the
nothing to
same.
show for your golf. When you come back from hunting, you can feed your family for 3 months. That's the difference. But More interestingly, I told my wife if I ever take up golfing, just get the divorce papers ready because this is over. Spending 7 hours on a golf course is like a
Yeah.
real not so subtle hint that this marriage is over. So yeah, I made a promise not to play golf. At least for now. The kids are still young. Maybe later when I'm rich like you.
But you're on your way. You're the most famous chief of staff in South Africa. You've got a lacquer salary, or is that coming to an end?
I'm still the chief of
Yes.
staff.
So you're still doing okay for now.
Um, yeah, yeah. They asked me
Are
to
you allowed
resign. I
to?
said no.
Yeah.
I prefer not to go into too much detail, but I'm still the chief of staff, and
All
I still
right.
do what work is given to me, and I do it to the best of my abilities. And there is very little leeway for them to remove me from my position for now. So I'm just carrying on.
Now, as a person who voted for the DA, right?
I have
Your
never
your
voted for the
boss,
DA.
your boss, John Steenhuisen, leading up to the election, his messaging was very clear, very uh, gave us a lot of hope. Uh, he wanted to eradicate all race-based laws. He wanted to, end the Doomsday Coalition, or stop the Doomsday Coalition from happening. So I kind of got behind this, right? So I think a lot of people did. I even made a song to support the DA. They made an ad of the South African flag burning, which got a lot of attention. A lot of people loved it or hated it. A lot of people were saying it's treason. Either way, it got people talking. And I took this ad and I made a song about, how can we sleep when our flag is burning? Made a parody of Beds Are Burning by Midnight Oil. Song did great. John even reposted it. Helen Ziller reposted it. Uh, People kind of fired up. Uh, and the DA did well in the election. And then, even more surprisingly, they started hiring people like yourself, who's, more conservative, maybe right leaning, which, I thought was a great move on their part. Guys like Ronaldo Gross became members of parliament, and it was just refreshing to see that kind of thing where, in the past years, they had guys like Musi Mamane, who was a pastor and, just regurgitated a lot of critical race theory crap that I actually bought into at the time, funny enough. But I look back on the things that he said and I'm like, wow, that's actually crazy that he was the leader of the DA and they lost support. So it felt like they were moving in the right direction. And then, the World Economic Forum happened in Davos, and it just seemed like John completely changed his tune. Or maybe it was actually before that. It was before that, where the media started making a lot of noise about John hiring you. You did the sensible thing before getting elected as the chief of staff by wiping your Twitter feed, because I think any reasonable person wouldn't want to attract any unnecessary controversy around things that you have said that could easily be misinterpreted. So you wiped your feed, but obviously there's the Wayback Machine, and journalists started, looking for things that you had said. And I can't remember exactly what they found, but what was the thing that put pressure on John to ultimately ask for you to step down?
I still don't know, to be frank with you. I still don't know. I haven't received any clarity from anyone within. Uh, it's important to note, I've never been a member of the DA. I don't work for the DA. I work for the Minister of Agriculture, who happens to be the DA leader. I just got an email after about 2 months that this is not working out. And when I asked for clarity, I didn't get any. And to this day, I still don't have clarity whatsoever. So I'm still doing my job. and I'm doing it to the best of my abilities with the work that they give me. It's a very important job to have, and I'm grateful that I have it. A lot of people think, oh, it's for the money. I earned more before I joined this. I joined
Yeah.
this as a calling. I was headhunted to it, and I will still continue to fulfill all the duties required by me until there is a solution or an agreement in place where I may leave. But for now, if I do leave, things won't be very good because there's no replacement strategy currently. As for, I mean, Davos and all that, I mean, I can't speak to why people do any of these things. I know that everyone is invited to go, and people do go. I noticed this year it was very empty, like completely empty. It was the same time as the Trump inauguration. Everyone went there rather. And yeah, I just think, when people get into positions of power, they change. And if you don't follow good advice, you don't follow good advice. It is as simple as that. And that's all I can really say at the moment without jeopardizing anything even further.
No, but I completely understand. But I think a lot of DA voters are in the same boat as me, where they kind of feel cheated by the DA. And I mean, it's stupid to, you know, trust politicians, because, this is what politicians do all the time. But yeah, it really pissed me off when they axed Ronaldo and they asked you to step down. It seemed really cowardly and spineless, in my opinion. Um, and this ties back to what I was saying about the Polish president, where he just says, this is what I believe in, and I honestly do not care what you think. And I think if John had told the Daily Maverick and any other news outlet that were trying to put pressure on him to have you fired, if John had just stood up and said, I literally do not care what you said, he would have got so much support. He might have, and the people that are kind of coming at him would never vote for the DA anyway. So I don't know why he cares so much. And I think that's the DA's problem, is that they have people that have voted for them just so that we can live as ordinary South Africans. We can have our property rights protected and respected. We can choose which hospitals we can go to, whether it's private or public. We just want a choice, at least. We want our children's education respected, and we just don't want these crazy race laws. And those were the promises that they went in with. They said, we're going to stop NHI and Bellable and BEE. And I was like, great, this sounds amazing. And now they're kind of complicit. And it just doesn't make sense to me. So without sounding like, a person with the tinfoil hat on, I know that the DA have explicitly put in their policy that they're following the UN's social development goals, and it's part of their policy. But I think a lot of people thought, well, they might put a rainbow crossroad in Cape Town, and they might do the odd, wokey thing here and there, but it's worth it to vote for them so that we stop an MK, EFF, ANC coalition. Like it's worth tolerating these things that they might do. But if anything, it feels like they're just rolling out communist legislation at the rate of knots. Like I've never seen so many communist bills being passed like in such a short space of time. It's quite troubling to see.
So I think it's important to clarify. These bills were passed in Parliament in the previous administration, and it's up to the president to sign them. And as far as I know, there's no mechanism in the agreements for the coalition about how to deal with the bills that were passed in the previous administration. So that's what they're grappling with at the moment. But I'll just make a macro point about this. There's a little instinct for tolerance, right? And tolerance has been deemed to be one of these great virtues of humanity that even if you find something intolerable, the intolerableness of it is actually your fault, right? We should actually be tolerant of a lot of things because that makes society better, is what we've been told forever and ever and ever, especially the liberal democracy. And the liberal tendency for tolerance actually allows a lot of vested interests and parasites into the liberal mold and subvert it from within. And you've seen this with liberal countries, liberal democracies around the world, from Europe to Australia to America before Trump 2.0, where the idea of tolerance is the highest virtue. Instead of saying, no, actually, authority and leadership is the highest virtue, tolerance is the highest virtue. So if you look at the Polish president at the time in 2015, 2016, where he says we have zero immigrants from Afghanistan and we don't want any, that's not a tolerance thing. That's a leadership thing. So I've been voted in for these principles and I'm going to follow them to the hilt. On the other hand, if you got someone like Keir Starmer in the UK, tolerance is the highest virtue. We ourselves as English people don't exist. There's no such thing as Englishness, which is this sort of, we're in an economic zone. And everyone can come in here and make money and pay taxes and pay for the NHS and all sorts of things. I know who will last longer as a country. It's the ones with leadership. It's the ones with
Yeah.
authority. It's the ones where people know exactly who they're voting for, and the people that they vote for effect what was voted for. So I think in terms of the UK, in terms of the DA, in terms of a lot of liberal parties or institutions around the world, this idea of tolerance has been expanded to such a degree that they just tolerate basically everything. As
Yeah.
Richard Dawkins once said, don't have such an open mind that your brain falls out. And I think that's what has
Yeah.
happened to the liberal international order. The brains have fallen out 20 years ago and they can't put it back in the head.
Or as Winston Churchill said, he said, if you're not a liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart. And if you're not conservative when you're older, then you don't have a brain. So pretty much the same idea. But yeah,
I never had a
I think
heart. I've never been a liberal.
I've at least had a heart in my younger years.
Oh, very
I
good. My heart
I
only
thought
belongs to my wife and my children and my family and my friends. That's it. No one else.
that's the thing. I think there's a sort of interesting observation that I've made where a lot of especially people in the DA who sort of endorse these UN social development goals, the sort of Ryan Coetzee of the world, they don't have children. And I think that's a very important distinction to make, is that people who care about the country and care about, you know, how much we tolerate are the people that have kids. And I really do think becoming a father really uh, allows you to really scrutinize policies and see them for what they are. I think I would often see things as a single male, see them as a sort of gray area thing where you're like, oh yeah, we should tolerate this and tolerate that. When you become a father, it becomes far more black and white because suddenly you have to care for a person that you're bringing up in a country where things are actually falling apart, and you see them for what they are. And another thing which helps you uh, see things more clearly is when you when you start paying incredible amounts of tax, which which is something I've had to start doing. Uh, so yeah,
Yeah.
I care a lot about where my money goes. Whereas I think if you're not contributing to the tax pool, you're a bit more complacent.
No, of course, there's no skin in the game. So I hate to be a fact checker, but I believe people like Ryan Coetzee, I think he does have a child. If I'm under correction, but I think they do. But
Correct me
I
if I'm
think
yeah.
in the element of the sort of sustainable development goals of the UN, this has been something that's been in existence since 2000 or 2005. It's very, very old. And I think a lot of people just take it on face value and don't critically analyze how to achieve those particular goals. Like, what is the point of gender equality? Does it mean more women as waste pickers? Does it mean more men as nurses? Does it mean more men as nursery school teachers? I mean, I don't want men to be nursery school teachers. I
Yeah.
just think the prevalence for bad things happening is much higher. I'd rather have
And,
women as nursery school
yeah.
teachers, right? So
And
I
again,
think there's just a yes, go ahead.
correct me if I'm wrong, but they're pushing for gender neutral toilets in schools and that sort of thing, which has, I think, for the most part, just been outright rejected by South Africa. And this is the
Correct.
thing. I think the DA, the Oscars have just happened, right? Let me use this analogy. Uh, if you're a movie director and this is the movie that you want to shoot, and it's a great story, but it's not going to win you an Oscar because it doesn't tick all the DEI boxes that are required to win an Oscar. So here's your story that you want to aim for, but now you have to change your story so that you can win an Oscar. That's exactly what the DA are doing, where they know the people and they know that this is what they should be doing. But in order to gain favor with the UN and the WEF, they have to do it this way. And it's becoming more and more clear to me that these politicians are pushing ideas that they don't even believe in themselves, but they have to do it if they want to secure funding or loans and all the stuff that are requirements, uh, for these rewards. And so when
Um,
they start saying we want to make gender neutral toilets and all this stuff, I don't think they actually believe that. I don't think they want that, but they have to if they're going to gain favor with these foreign uh, funders. Again, correct me if
don't
I'm wrong. My
sure.
observation.
Don't underestimate the incredible lack of critical thinking. That's all I'm going to say. Don't underestimate it. I think we give a lot of power and nuance to people who might not have the capacity to act in that way, um, in a sort of strategic intelligence sense. So that's all. Just going to leave it at that. I don't want to go delve too deep into it. The DA hasn't spoken to me in many months. They don't take my calls or anything like that. So I don't know what they're doing. But at the end of the day, they're just functionaries of the state, and that role does not need hyper intelligence at all.
Yeah. No, it's concerning, but I think it's also paving the way for you know a moderate, maybe right-leaning party or sort of coalition to form. And I don't know how or what that's going to look like in the future,
Listen,
but
I hear this a lot about this moderate. Why do we need to be moderate? I mean, our enemies are not moderate, right? People who want to take our stuff and not pay us for it are not moderate. The DA is moderate, but I think it works very well to be moderate. I think you need to become a very intolerant minority that says the red lines are here, we refuse to budge, and you build a movement based on intolerance. I'm intolerant of crime. I'm intolerant of economic sabotage. I'm intolerant of racism. Like, become intolerant. Becoming
yeah,
moderate, you just get sucked up into the, the, the bigger power structures.
yeah. There's I can't remember the name of the philosopher now, but there's this thing called the paradox of intolerance, or the paradox of tolerating intolerance. So as we were talking
Correct.
about earlier, we nations like the UK, they strive for becoming a tolerant nation, but then suddenly, you have like a Muslim minority that starts growing and starts demanding more and more things like Sharia law, and they want to enforce their beliefs on a Christian nation, at what point do you say that's enough? Because if you keep tolerating it, suddenly England doesn't look like England anymore, and it actually becomes, it looks like a Middle Eastern country. So at what point do you say, I'm going to tolerate this, but, this is the line?
It's
And
difficult
as
to
you
do
say,
it halfway through.
yeah, so I mean, it's also it's a paradox for me as a Christian, because a lot of Christian belief is based on tolerance and turning the other cheek, and just there's a verse in the Bible that says you must rejoice when you're persecuted and called all kinds of things for telling the truth, which is something I take a lot of comfort in. When I say something for what it is, and the media, loses their mind, and the mob comes after me, I take it on the chin. I just go, this is just part of it. Persecution and uh, being called all kinds of things is part of what it is to be a Christian. But on the same token, at what cost?
Yeah, but I also think that's also a slight misreading of what Jesus actually wanted. Jesus was always about the truth, and he fought for the truth. Like he kicked people out of the temple and beat them, right? I think we need to get back to a muscular Christianity. There's a chap on Twitter
Wow.
called Bob the Builder. I don't know if you've ever seen Bob the Builder, and he's in
No.
Hyde Park at Speaker's Corner, and he says, "My Christianity, um,
Oh yes, I've seen that.
say that this, and my Christianity is the Christianity of X, Y, Z," and he lists all these historical examples where Christianity was used in a muscular way to get a power, essentially. I mean, the abolishment of slavery was a Christian mission. You didn't ask for bureaucrats to define should slavery be abolished. They said, no, no, no. As Christians, we need to abolish slavery, and we will be killed for it. We will suffer vast amounts of economic harm for it. We will go to war for it. But Christianity dictates that slavery is a sin, and we're going to abolish it. And they did it. And the English did it.
Yeah,
Get back to that. Don't infuse Christianity with sort of modern liberalism. That's the death of it.
yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is, when it comes to just how we deal with persecution, uh, we need to we need to show grace. Is all I'm trying to say. Is that you can tell someone to go to hell, but make them look forward to the trip. I think one of my strengths, which could be seen as a weakness, is instead of pulling the middle finger and telling someone to f off, I'd rather use something like humor or be kind to someone, and that is my weapon. Uh, that's not to say that I tolerate their intolerance. It's just that I approach it in a way that isn't necessarily, an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth. And I think that
Yeah, I
is
mean,
that is,
yeah.
that is our strength as Christians. But forgive me, I mean, if you beg to differ, then
So I haven't delved too deeply into this. I spoke to Douglas Wilson last year or 2 years ago. Douglas Wilson is a very so-called radical Lutheran, actually. He lives in Moscow, Idaho, and he wants to take over the town and make it a Christian town. And he was on Tucker Carlson recently, and I read quite a few of his works, and he gives a very good analysis on what muscular Christianity is, and it's how he lives his life. So if you sort of struggle with these questions, Douglas Wilson might give you some light into how to actually behave. And he's highly intolerant of anything that wants to destroy him, like highly, highly, highly intolerant.
so I'll make this distinction, right? I think if there's something that you know to be true, and you know that if you say it, you're gonna get completely destroyed by the media or whatever. I think a Christian who knows what he believes and what he stands for will say it despite what anyone says because they know it to be true. Whereas I believe someone like John Steenhuisen, who knows something to be true, won't say it because he's too scared about what the consequences might be. And I think that is the distinction. Someone who is a true Christian will say something and deal with the consequences later because that is what faith is. Faith is saying, I'm going to say this because I know what might come my way. I'm going to get death threats. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get that. But you know what? I'm going to say it anyway because my reward's in heaven. But I really do think this is important as the electorate. We need to start really considering what our options are in the future because we can't vote for another party that says they're going to do something and then they don't because they're literally just too scared of what the media is going to do to them. And I really
I mean,
think,
yes.
I really think John, in his heart of hearts, wanted to hire you, but is literally just got overwhelmed by the amount of articles that were written about you in the Daily Maverick. I've never seen. I mean, there's so many things that they could focus on. They could focus on this Andile guy from the Black Land First movement who's been saying all kinds of crazy stuff, but still remains a member of parliament. But they focus on, a centre-right leaning podcaster who isn't even a DA member, who's just doing his job. He's a lawyer who's signing contracts and, making the office more efficient. But that's the thing that they take issue with. And he could just ignore it.
I mean, yes, yes, I agree. But yeah, let me not say anything that jeopardizes anything. But yes, I agree. I think we need a lot more intolerance to nonsense, right? I think we both agree on this, and I think we both need. But also, you also tend to be, if I may say so, like a little bit obsessed with like politics, and I think politics for the most part is a zero-sum game in terms of the people that we elect maybe don't have all the control and maybe are paid salaries to say certain things at certain times for a vested interest, for an outcome wanted by vested interests. So I don't think we should put too much faith in politics. I think politics at the moment, especially in our country, is mostly celebrity gossip for the most part. Like the State of the Nation addresses the Oscars, who's the best dressed, and he's going to say a speech that no one actually believes in. But when it gets down to the matters of the budget, that's far more important. But at the end of the day, especially in South Africa, the Afrikaners are finding this out, and they've been doing this for quite a while. Quite a few other tribes have been doing it here. But we have to state-proof ourselves from political nonsense, right? We have to become people where the politics doesn't actually matter. You keep an eye on it. You make sure that, if they do something wrong, you enforce your way to make sure it doesn't actually materialize. And we've got a lot of examples of that in this country. But at the end of the day, politics shouldn't matter because you are insulated from it as a community or as a tribe or as a town or as a city or even as a household. Like I'm insulated for the most part from it because of my investment into the house and what I've done to it. I think that's the mindset that will really determine the difference between people who survive well and people who don't in this country.
So I'll just share my, state proofing journey, if you want to call it that. But, when I started out as a musician, it was important to have your music on the radio, on 5FM, whatever stations would play your music. It was a great advert. You get paid royalties. Back in the day, if you had a song on the charts, you could literally buy a house or a car with the royalties that you make. Ask Art Matthews from Just Ginger, who bought a castle, from summer royalties that he used to make. Good for him. But then, SABC decides they're no longer going to pay Samro or Sampra, our royalty collection agencies, just, because they don't want to. And so suddenly having a song on the radio might be an okay advert as listenership kind of goes down, but you're not making any money from it. People are actually paying the radio stations to play their music. It's gone the complete opposite direction. You've got, these I'm a piano artists that are going to stations with, bottles of whiskey and 10,000 rand saying, play the song. So the whole royalty system is messed up now. And I had to discover this through various investigations. It eventually got picked up by Carte Blanche, where they just saw the amounts of corruption going on. I eventually got something from Samro and Sampra, who are equally as corrupt as the SABC. So you've got the SABC who aren't paying, firstly, and then you've got Samro and Sampra that aren't paying the royalties that are coming to them from private stations like Prime Media, 947, those kind of stations who actually are paying Samra and Sampra because they have to. But for some reason, the SABC is exempt. So I made a little bit of money from, having my songs on rotation on Highveld and KFM and other private stations. But yeah, this whole thing's just not really working out for me. So I decide I'm going to launch my own channel on YouTube and just focus more on that. And I'm happy to say that in a month, I can make more on YouTube now than I think Samro or Sampra has paid me in my entire life, which is great. So now I've state-proofed myself from the gatekeepers of the music industry. And then, we start experiencing more load shedding, all the stuff. I invest in a solar system. I've state-proofed myself from Eskom. And this is all great. As you say, we need to state-proof ourselves. And, whenever there's load shedding, I don't really feel the effect. But my question is, how do you state-proof yourself from NHI? If your child is sick, and now we don't have the choice of private hospitals, now what?
So I have a controversial opinion that NHI is not going to pass in any meaningful way. They're pushing it as much as possible. I just think there's far too much against it for it to pass in a real sense. There's a current court case right now. I think Mediclinic is going to ask the court to make the whole thing unconstitutional. We will see. It is a system that has never been tried before anywhere in the world. There's no system in the world anywhere where private healthcare is abolished. Even England, right? You've got the NHS, which is still private healthcare. And if NHI had to come, right, in all its glory, right, and private healthcare is abolished completely, that's the time that I move out. Right? That is something that one cannot tolerate. Or you stay here and you go to Mauritius for healthcare if you can afford it.
Yeah.
But I just, knowing what I know and knowing how the government works, it would shock me beyond measure if anything close to NHI is passed in a real sense as practice. It's easy to fund laws. It's easy to write laws. To implement it when we have no money, no
Yeah.
appetite for it, so much opposition to it, and Donald Trump looking over your shoulder, you sign your own death warrant.
And now
So
the World Bank are looking over our
yes,
shoulder too.
correct.
Um,
Even the globalist institutions are like, guys, you've gone too far with this nonsense, right?
uh,
The people that implemented it are tired of it. That's when you know you're on the wrong track.
do you think this might be a turning point if the World Bank makes loans or grants too expensive, or just says no, that they might go, okay, let's get rid of BEE now because no one wants to give us money?
So I don't think the ANC will change. I'm just wondering if they'll survive until 2028. That's the
Yeah,
dilemma they face.
yeah. And I mean, with NHI, a lot of people don't realize this, but we already do have NHI. It's called public hospitals. And my dad worked in one of them for many years. When he was training to become a doctor, he worked at Baragwanath, which was one of the best hospitals in the world. And it was a great system. You paid according to your income. If you didn't have a job, you got operated on for free. If you're middle income, you pay this amount. If you're rich, you pay that amount. And it worked. And we had some of the best facilities in the world. Some people actually went to Baragwanath or any other public hospital over private because they just had better equipment. And it's just amazing that, it's all kind of falling apart. I was actually at an NHS hospital in the UK on my recent tour. I got a little bit of a taste of public hospital life. I mean, the place was clean, but you had to wait. And I ended up not being treated just because, we waited for 3 hours, and I saw a nurse who took my blood pressure and then said, we'll call you when the doctor's available. And we waited, and I had to go and do my show without being treated. So, I mean, even the NHS, which is run in a first world country, is not great. And I can't imagine what it would be like here. It would literally be the stuff out of nightmares.
Absolute disaster. I know, people who work in public health up here in Johannesburg, and the system collapsed 5 years ago. Just because people go to a building and give some medium of care, the system's not collapsed according to our overlords. But it's collapsed long ago. There's no ink cartridges for printers. Software licenses for medical machines have not been renewed in 3 years. The
Yeah.
light bulbs are out and they haven't been replaced in 2 years. So just the most basic things are not happening. And if you need
One thing
250 billion rand, yeah.
The one thing I'll give the NHS credit for is I got some free water, nice cold water out of the cooler, and they had a cell phone charging station. So thanks for the free water. Well, it's not free. Thank you to the UK taxpayers for the water.
I think you got something out of it. At least you did. So this podcast has really taken a turn that I never expected at all. You interview me for the longest time on issues that are a little bit sensitive, but it's all fine. It's all fine. This is a free speech podcast. We are allowed such things. What is next for you yourself as an artist living in South Africa? So I assume the music will continue. Do you have other aspirations? Because the beauty about living in South Africa is if you're moderately competent, you can really be the top 1% of anything.
Yeah.
And you already are. I think you must be at least in the top 5 artists this country has produced in the past decade. In terms of income, in terms of views, in terms of streams, in terms of all those sort of things. So what's next for the Kiffness? Or have you already reached the zenith?
Look, I mean, I'm currently touring as much as I can. I'm lucky in that, I've got a great team, a manager from Germany who has opened many doors for me. Unfortunately, on the sort of sponsorship front, there's no opportunity because I'm so kind of outspoken. Brands don't want to touch anyone who has opinions that might be deemed controversial in any sense. So I'm not making any money from sponsorships, but I'm grateful for YouTube and the amazing people that come to my shows and buy my merchandise and all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty much what this year is going to look like. Just a lot of touring. I'm going to the States, Australia, Europe again this year, going to Sweden and Denmark for the first time as well. So, yeah. Do I want to do this forever? Probably not, unless my family, want to come and tour with me. I'd absolutely hate being away from my son and my wife. But yeah, I'm not sure. For some reason, I don't know why, but I'm drawn to uh, politics and just what's going on in the country. I think we touched on it earlier. I think becoming a father and wanting a future for your children in this country plays a big part in that. And I've been blessed with a platform where I can speak my mind and people listen to what I say. And I don't know where that's going to lead me. I don't want to become a politician, to be honest, but I
Me
enjoy
neither.
being, I enjoy just sharing my mind without fear of what people think or say. And I think I'm in a very unique position as an artist because so many artists, if not most artists in this country, rely on being booked by festivals, by having their songs on the radio and sponsorship. And all those things will go away if if you start talking about issues that actually matter. You're there to entertain people and distract people from what's going on. So if you bring the spotlight onto things that matter, cheers. We don't want to be a part of that. And I don't blame festival organizers or brands for wanting to stay away from that because um yeah, it brings unnecessary or unwanted attention to that brand. Um, I've
Mm.
I've seen it firsthand where I've worked with a brand and then I'll say something and then the EFF bots will see that I did a deal with this particular brand and then they'll start harassing them. No one wants that, so I get it. Um,
It would be very good if brands started actually having a set of testicles, though. Wouldn't it be? Like I've never had sponsorships in my life. I had a few advertisers on morning shots when I used to run that. Small ones. I mean, they pay a little amount of money. You sponsor. They sponsor a video or two. It's fine. But there's no brand, as far as I know, in this country that's going to say, I'm intolerant of nonsense, and I'm just going to fund people who are intolerant of nonsense proudly. In America, you have this all the time. Like Tucker Carlson can say, "Oh, Israel killed JFK," and oh, here's an advert for whatever, whatever. Some
yeah.
mattress company. You're like, how does this happen? It's like it's great that it's happening, but it would never happen here. It
Well,
would be so nice if there was a money with deep pockets who would just be like, "Listen, I'm intolerant, and I'm going to fund those who are as well."
I think it comes down to, at least for me, it comes down to faith. Because there was a time where I was saying this stuff and I didn't have any idea of what the consequences of this were going to be. Um, when I started making YouTube videos at the start of COVID, I gained a bit of popularity with my parodies, and brands were approaching me and saying, "Hey, we want to pay you to do a parody of our brand." And I was like, "Great, let's do this." And then the mayor of Ekurhuleni started calling me a racist, and then brands just ran away. They said sorry, and that was money that I really could have done with, like deals worth 300,000 rand when I only had like 5 grand in my bank accounts. I would have loved a bit of money from a brand. Um, and I guess that's where faith really comes in when you feel compelled to say something, even if the consequences immediately are going to be felt. And I felt that, and I was like, there are times where I doubted. I was like, was it really worth it to say that for losing a brand deal? And there was just always that voice saying, you know what, just stay faithful. Like you're on the right path, even though it feels like you're not. And here I am, where I could never imagine that the studio that I'm in was bought and paid for with money that I made from YouTube, which is just great. And I'm so thankful that I listened to that voice.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same boat. A lot of people would say, well, how are you going to go join like the Minister of Agriculture's chief of staff? Listen, I made my name by shitting on all these people forever. Here's a chance to get in, make a real difference. or attempt to at the very least, you have to do it as a man of honor, as a man of you know, when the opportunity is there to join the tent, you have to go in. You can't just sit on the outside because that's weak. That's very weak just to be on the outside all the time and just criticize and just criticize. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't do that. You actually give to charity. You actually enable people. You actually collaborate with people and send them half the money or whatever the case might be. Like you actually do it. But for
I've
me, I
recently,
mean, yeah, good.
I've recently become a member of AfriForum as well. A group that, look, I'm going to be honest. I used to be one of those people that would just read what the news would tell me and I'd believe it. And for many years, I just saw AfriForum as this fringe, right wing, racist Afrikaans group, but they're
That's
not.
the only reason. That's the only reason I joined them. Are you saying that's untrue? I must cancel. I must cancel my debit order.
No, I mean, I'm just so grateful for platforms like X that have just cut out the media middleman, and you can listen to guys like Adams Van Sale, Conscious Caracal, who's just saying things as they are, and it just makes so much sense if you go to the source and see what they're doing, and not have this skewed media opinion of them. I mean, it's just been the most bizarre last 2 weeks or so where the media and politicians have been calling these guys treasonous and they should be arrested. You've got Herman Mashaba signing uh, petitions to have them arrested. It's just crazy.
Yeah,
Um, so maybe in the future I'd see myself uh, either forming or joining some kind of civil rights movement that actually is separate to the government, where people pay voluntary donations and they have the freedom to do things that aren't, you know, stopped by bureaucracy and this government inefficiency.
I've got a pitch for you. I need 10 million rand. We'll talk about it after the podcast. No,
Nice.
I'm joking. All
Not
right.
making that money quite yet, but after this next
Yeah.
American tour, then we can talk.
Oh, really? Okay, brilliant. I've got my first investor. I can go to others. Look, the Kiffness has invested. So come on. No, no, I'm not going to ever ask for money from friends because that's just bad faith. You always use strangers' money. It's much, if you want just a little hack, if you want to seek funding for something in life, go to people that do business, don't go to friends because you don't want to ruin that relationship at all.
Great.
Just a life hack for you. All right, but Kiffness, my
Right.
friend, we
Was
have
it not Oscar Wilde?
yes,
Was it Oscar Wilde who said if you're going to loan money to a friend, you must be either prepared to lose your money or lose your friend?
correct,
Yeah.
correct. And I prefer to lose neither, so I don't even go there. I really don't even go there. All right, so if people want to get hold of you, I've linked your X and your YouTube channel in the description down below. Any final thoughts on surviving South Africa for the next 10 years? It looks like it's going to be an extremely bumpy ride, and even I can't predict what the hell's going to happen. But any thoughts from your side?
I think sunlight is the best disinfectant. I think all this stuff has been brewing and festering for the last 30 years. And it's all coming to light. We're on the international stage. People are watching. People are seeing what it's like to live in this country, and people are, I think, finally waking up to the fact that the Madiba magic has worn off. We felt great as a nation. I feel like from '95 to about maybe even 2015, that that 20-year period felt okay. Um, but yeah, the wheels are starting to come off. Maybe it's because I'm a parent that I'm just more aware of this stuff. I don't know. But it feels like, when you look at a banana, it looks fine. It looks great for a couple of days, but there, there's like a turning point. There's a day where it looks fine, and then the next day it doesn't. But all the time, it's kind of just decomposing on the inside until you realize, oh, this is a fruit banana, and that's where we're at. Maybe we need to turn that fruit banana into banana bread, for lack of a better analogy.
I like
So
it.
those are my final thoughts. But I'm just glad that you know this this country is being looked at, and uh, when the eyes are on you, I think that's when good things can happen. People do evil things when no one's looking, but if people are watching, that's where they either double down or repent for their sins, and hopefully we start repenting.
Amen to that. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, brother, and sorry for pressing you so much on your appointment. But as a DA voter who I don't even know if I'm going to vote for them in the next election, probably not unless they make a complete 180 again and go back to what they were saying, before the election. Who knows what's going to happen? Uh, but yeah, I think the future of this country, as we alluded to, is in state proofing and maybe putting more faith in civil rights organizations that aren't in the government, and just doing what we can to avoid them. So those are my final thoughts.